There was a song, a Michael W. Smith song, and it's called I Miss the Way, and the lyrics are these. Once a true believer, once there was a fire in your soul. You were the epitome of blessed faith astir with thirst for holiness and hunger for the word. Now you move in other circles to the beat of different drums, and I see only glimpses of the one you used to be, the inspiration that you were to me. The chorus goes this way. I miss the way his love would dance within your eyes. I miss the way his heart was the soul of your life. And somewhere in the saddest part of heaven's room, our Father sheds a tear for you. He's missing you too. The second verse is, some are calling you a prodigal. Some aren't calling you at all. But far away, someone is calling you back home. Do you hear it anymore out there on your own? I miss the way his love would dance within your eyes. I miss the way his heart was the soul of your life. And somewhere in the saddest part of heaven's room, our Father sheds a tear for you. He's missing you too. You know, all of us have had friend, relative that we felt this way about. We spent time helping to shape them, helping them to grow, watching them grow. And then something happens. They go off the path. Perhaps they get seduced by a group. Perhaps they just wander off the path themselves. You parents out there may know this. It's not uncommon for good Christian parents to raise their kids only to see them go off, do their own thing, forget about God. You've taught them about wrong and right. You've taught them about the Lord. You try to ensure that their compass is oriented to true north. And maybe they go off to college. Maybe they go off to a job. Maybe they're taken by progressive ideas, leftist ideas, unchristian ideas. Maybe they're taken by some church, or maybe even something that is like a cult. Something else but the truth of the Lord snags them. And the physical distance that you feel, no matter what it is, it just accentuates the spiritual distance that you feel. And if you can say that you've shared this experience to some extent, then you share another thing with the Apostle Paul. We're in Galatians 4, and we are in Galatians 4, 12 through 20. This is part of a little tangent that Paul's going on. It's a very personal tangent. So let's read that right now. Galatians 4, 12 through 20. He says, I plead with you, brothers and sisters, become like me, for I became like you. You did me no wrong. As you know, it was because of an illness that I first preached the gospel to you, and even though my illness was a trial to you, you did not treat me with contempt or scorn. Instead, you welcomed me as if I were an angel of God, as if I were Christ Jesus himself. Where then is your blessing of me now? I can testify that if you could have done so, you would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? Those people are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us, so that you may have zeal for them. It is fine to be zealous, provided the purpose is good, and to be so always, not just when I'm with you. My dear children, for whom I am again in the pains of childbirth until Christ is formed in you, how I wish I could be with you now and change my tone, because I am perplexed about you. We're going to be looking at this. This part is not necessarily full of doctrine, but it's full of the words that come straight from Paul's heart. The big idea here is, no matter how tenuous the relationship, the only remedy to disconnection is telling the loving truth. No matter how tenuous the relationship, the only remedy to this disconnection is telling the loving truth. So let's look at this passage a little deeper. Let's see what it means to the Galatians. When we read this first part, it says, I plead with you, brothers and sisters, become like me, for I became like you. I don't know about you, but those kind of phrases always make me stumble because it just doesn't make perfect sense. I don't know what exactly he's saying. However, when you dig down deep, it comes out to be what he is saying to the Galatians is this. Put yourself in my place because I put myself in yours. For me, again, sometimes the quirkiness of translations can throw me off. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I just start perseverating on words. But once I read this translation, put yourself in my place because I put myself in your place, it put everything into context. Paul is pleading with them, and he's saying, put yourself in my place, like I did. I put myself in your place. What you notice here is that these next few verses are Paul reminding Galatians, this entire group he's writing to, about the relationship he had with them. He tells them that it was, first off, reminding them of how he came there. It was because of an illness that I first preached the gospel to you. There's really no way to know which illness he's talking about. Later on, he talks about, you would have torn out your eyes and given them to me. It may be something to do with his eyes, but it may not be. It may be something else entirely. But they know what he's talking about. So he puts this first in this context, and he says, you did not treat me with contempt or scorn. He's reminding them of these good old days, if you will. He says, you didn't treat me that way. Instead, you welcomed me. In fact, you welcomed me as if I were an angel of God, or even Jesus Christ himself. He's trying to tell them, look, back then I came to preach to you, and I preached the gospel to you. And at that time, your hearts were very warm to me, very accepting, very welcoming. And then he says, where then is your blessing of me now? Indicates that the Galatians were having a problem with Paul. Now we know that Paul has already talked about the fact that this other group has gotten them well off the path that he set them on. Back then we saw him say things like, you foolish Galatians. But here, softer tone. First off, it's a pleading. We see that right off the bat. I plead with you, brothers. But it's a softer tone, and then he's telling them how things were. Remember those things. In fact, they were so much of a wonderful time, and you were such wonderful people that you would have, in a sense, maybe torn out the eyes and given them to me is more literal because of the illness, but maybe it was just saying you would have given me the shirt off your back. But at 16, verse 16, this right here is the hard truth, is now they are looking askance at him because they have been dissuaded, they have been seduced by this other group. And so at this point he says, have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? Verse 17 then picks us up after he's set this context, saying, remember how it was when we were together. Remember. And have I changed at all? And why would you think differently of me now? Well, the reason that they were thinking differently because of those group. We assume that they were the group of the Judaizers because of what they have been doing. They've been trying to get the Galatians to follow the law. They've been actually preaching a false gospel. It is a works-based gospel rather than a faith-based gospel. We have seen Paul detail these out. But now, again, this is personal. And he's writing them, so he can't even be there. Certainly can't talk to them on the phone. So that sense of his is that there is a distance that he's trying to cover with his words. But now he's telling them about them. Those people, he says, are zealous to win you over, but for no good. What they want is to alienate you from us so that you may have zeal for them. Now, I don't know about you, but this makes me think of how cults work. Cults, many times, try to get people hemmed in. They try to get the control of people. So much so that they try to alienate them from their friends, from their family. It's very, very understandable if we think of these Judaizers as some kind of cults. They certainly are trying to win them over. The words here about winning you over is about they've been trying to court you to get you to their camp. And what they want to do is they want to alienate you from us. Again, very cultic, manipulative type of behavior. He knows the Galatians' zeal because he then underscores that it is okay. In 18, he says, it is fine to be zealous, provided the purpose is good. And to be so always, not just when I am with you. Paul is remembering what it was like when these of his spiritual children were zealous for the gospel. And he's saying it is okay to be zealous. But he knows that this other group has used that zeal and has gotten them off the path. But he's telling them, look, it's fine to be zealous, provided that purpose is good. That's the key. The purpose being good for the zeal. I know when I was growing up, I heard a lot more about cults. I heard a lot more of how cults worked. And they worked like this. And the thing of is that cults aren't always just whack jobs outright. They're not always waiting for comets to come. But those kind of cults have now encroached in the church. And they take the young, and they take the naive, and they distort the truth. And once they get them in there, they circle the wagons around them. Things really haven't changed since Paul's time. Humans are still humans. But that same zeal that the Galatians had, that the Judaizers are now using against them, is a good thing. And in fact, Paul is saying that he wants them to be that way always, and not just having the zeal when he is with them. Because that is a sign of maturity, when the zeal can be there whether or not that your mentor is there or not. But if you look at verse 19, this right here is something that I think goes right to the heart. He says, my dear children, from whom I am again in the pains of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. How I wish I could be with you now and change my tone because I am perplexed about you. pains of childbirth. The pains of childbirth would be similar to when he was teaching them and preaching the gospel at the beginning. But he realizes they've gone so far off the path that he's got to start back at scratch. He's got to start at square one. It says, until Christ is formed in you. Christ is formed in you. This actually is another way, and Alan Cole translated it like this way, and I think this is a good way to do it, is until you take the shape of Christ. Paul is going to go at it again from the beginning until they take the shape of Christ. And he shows this personal anguish. How I wish I could be with you now and change my tone because I'm perplexed about you. We see Paul with all this doctrine thus far, but right now this is just this personal passage that should have gone right to that heart. He has a frustrated tone, but it's that of a loving parent. And he doesn't just want to slam them. He wants things to be different. But because he had seen them go down the path, not just get on the path, but go down the path, and now are off it, they confuse him. But what does this mean to us? What does this passage mean to us? This passage is a personal passage from Paul to the Galatians. But I think there are plenty of things that are meaningful to us. Things that we can derive from them. Because we may face some of the same issues with people we have spent time with, the people we have mentored. What we can do is we can take the example of Paul and how he addressed the Galatians with how we deal with those kind of people in our own lives. Number one, if you notice, again, we should be like Paul in that we should remind those folks of the relationship we had with them. The reason that this part is important is, number one, it will remind them, but it will also remind us. Because many times in our own frustrations, we want to hammer people. But by reminding them of the relationship we once had with them, it will remind both parties. And it will set the context of the conversation. Number two, we should follow his example because we should tell them the truth. In this passage, Paul is being perhaps a wee bit more diplomatic. Again, he's not saying you're a bunch of idiots for doing what you've done. He said, you foolish Galatians before. He didn't hold back earlier in the same letter. But here, he's a little bit more diplomatic. But if you notice that the truth is such that he's explaining the actual situation. Those people are zealous to win you over. What they want to do is alienate you from us. Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth? Identifying that part, identifying the truth of the current relationship, identifying the reasons that you think the relationship has divided is very important, because without the truth, there will be no actual progress. There will be no actual reconciliation. And if you try to spin it, you would be as manipulative as the people that Paul's talking about. The key is the truth. And number three, we should follow a good example because we should have the end in mind when we go and talk with those folks. We too should be willing to start from scratch because we know the end, for them to become Christ-like. very stubborn people. We're easily fooled, and we're often foolish. But just like Paul here, he does the fantastic job of couching this personal part not as an attack, but as a section of loving truth, telling them what the issue is, reminding them of what once was, and also telling them how Paul himself is what he is experiencing, that confusion, that perplexity. You know, some of our children or our friends may be seduced into leaving the path. When this happens, we may feel the pain and the stress and the disappointment of being alienated from them. We can feel the anger when we see other groups seducing our loved ones. But no matter how rocky that relationship gets, we can take Paul as an example and try to reach them by telling them the truth in love. Telling the truth in love. It is endemic to the gospel. Truth and love. We too may feel, I miss the way his love would dance within your eyes, and I miss the way his heart was the soul of your life. Somewhere in the saddest part of heaven's room, our Father sheds a tear for you. He's missing you too. This song doesn't end on a happy note. It's a very poignant song, but it has real truth within it. When somebody comes to Christ and then they go off the path, our Father sheds a tear for them, and He's missing them too. The best we can do is intercede with them by telling them the truth in a loving way. Let's pray.